What's good, y'all? It's your man's IRLnash back in the building. Welcome to the Pokemon Center as always. Today I got my man Joey Keys with me, and the video that we are going to be reacting to is going to be why only 3 companies own the entire music industry. I'm really intrigued by this. Also, I did not get my YouTube subscription subscribed, so we watching ads again. Sorry, y'all. I know I gotta fucking fix it. Kobe was like, bro, you gotta get this shit off your shit, bro. I'm like, I know, bro. You don't gotta tell me every time. All right, let's jump into this shit though. I knew it was gonna do that.
I'm learning something already. I didn't even realize that there was 3 companies that owned it all.
Shit. I knew, but
it makes sense. It makes sense.
I'm saying it's just like how the tobacco companies end up owning like all of the companies in America at a certain time because they was all fighting against each other because they had did all them legislations against tobacco, like even putting that Surgeon General's warning on the front.
Yeah.
So tobacco companies just bought up like all the companies in America so that they can market through those companies they tobacco. Basically, like
it's kind of like a lot of the TVs and stuff too. A lot of the TVs, they say different names on them, Vizio, and things like that, but they actually coming from the same producer.
Hyacinths.
Yeah, like they coming from the same.
Making all them bitches, bro. Yeah.
That's how they keep it from being a monopoly.
Yeah. It's like how Lexus in a Acura.
Yeah,
and shit
or
like that.
Mopar is Dodge and shit like that, Jeep and shit.
You want a Lincoln or do you want a Ford? It's the same car, but which one do you want? What brand do you want? All right, let's go. My bad.
Know why, but you know that people hate them. And another thing you might know is that there's a lot of them. Virgin Records, Island Records, Atlantic Records, Def Jam, Columbia, Capitol, RCA, Republic, Motown, EMI,
but
Arista,
they are
Interscope,
all
and many
just,
more. But what if I told you
they
that
are
pretty
just
much every record label ever is owned by just 3 major labels: Universal Music Group, Warner Music Group, and Sony Music Entertainment. And pretty much every artist you listen to.
But it's just like when who said that shit? Like, you signed to 3 niggas who signed to 2 niggas who signed to 1 nigga.
Yeah, I know exactly.
Like, everybody is technically. Was that Pusha T you said? Or
I think
somebody
it was.
say it against Pusha? I can't remember.
It's effectively signed to one of these 3 labels. In fact, the big 3 record labels, as they're often called, own about 70% of the music
and the rest
industry,
is independent.
with Universal alone being bigger than every indie label combined. And we
call that indie label. So are those indie labels that aren't umbrellaed by those other 3 companies? Or are those indie labels that are sponsored by those other 3 companies as well?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
or there's a distributions or anything in between.
Exactly. That's what because obviously it can't be an indie label if it's underneath the umbrella. But if you got a distribution deal through Sony and you a indie label, like, come on,
still
bro.
Technically,
come on, bro.
Technically,
no disrespect neither. I don't want nobody to be like, you don't even know what you're talking about. You still are an indie label. Nobody considers that an indie label who's broke. People in the industry consider that an indie label. Niggas who just live in day-to-day lives, if you got a distribution deal, nigga, you got a deal. Like, the key word in that is deal. Even if you got a marketing 50-50 deal, that's basically distribution, but still, niggas be like, no, all they do is market. And I'm like, yeah, nigga, you breaking down money with other niggas, though.
It's an oligopoly, yes, I know. But how many people would know what that means in the title? This just looked better, so I'm running with it. So, how did this happen? There aren't too many other industries where just 3 companies are running it all by themselves, so why music? And why is this a problem for the music industry? Well, to understand that, I think we have to understand how labels operate a little bit better. The first record label ever founded wasn't actually Columbia Records, like some sources may claim. It was actually Thomas Edison's Edison Records back in 1888. But a video about Edison Records' rivalry with Columbia Records back in the 1890s wouldn't be too interesting, so we can just skip to the 1950s and 60s where things start to heat up a bit. At this point, at the top of the music industry, there were the big 6 rather than the big 3. Warner Brothers Records, EMI, CBS Records, Polygram, RCA,
RCA.
But the music industry was
you don't hear about RCA as much anymore. RCA used to be, they had their own cables. They used to call those red white and yellow cables. They were called RCA. They are called RCA cables. Because I think that they pioneered them hoes.
Diverse and pretty healthy. A lot of the artists that were dominating the charts were signed to independent record labels. In fact, independent labels were so dominant that the idea of an indie artist as a discrete category hadn't even existed yet. There was also a lot of new labels popping up, like Sun Records and Motown Records, which drove music forward with innovative new styles.
Motown
and then there was a lot of labels that came and went, like Kama Sutra Records,
especially for an era
at that time. Yeah,
I would even go as far as say Motown is one of the most talented record labels that ever existed. The people that they helped produce, were there helping, even like the background, not just vocalists, but the drum players, shit like that. Like them niggas were top of the line people, bro. Like when you talk about, and these dudes was just probably cats from Detroit. Just some nigga who worked at the factory who knew how to play bass good as shit. He probably made more money at the factory than he did in the studio at that time.
Which failed to adapt to the audience's changing tastes. The competitive environment was really good for the music industry, and it may seem strange today, but back in the 50s and 60s, a lot of music fans actually had loyalties towards specific record labels. The stamp of a specific label could function as a badge certifying the quality of the music, and record labels were also usually set up to produce a certain type of music, and Motown Records is probably one of the best examples, because of course they became so well known for releasing pop-influenced soul music that the entire genre was named after them. And this is kind of funny that I'm just finding this out while making this video, but the reason they're called record labels is because their names were printed on the labels and then stuck to the middle of the record. Seems kind of obvious now that I'm thinking about it, huh?
Music is one of the best ways to express your feelings.
That's
why today
they always got shiesties on, no matter what it is.
The benefit of having so many indie labels is that they were able to take business.
I don't know if you want to keep calling them shiesties
anymore. After Rights Act was some years away. The majority of African Americans were living in Southern states where they were denied the right to vote and were overwhelmingly stuck with crippling poverty. And yet, Motown's founder Berry Gordy managed to become a successful businessman. For decades, Motown Records was the single biggest African-American owned business in the country, and Gordy achieved this by selling millions of records by black performers, usually to middle-class white families. Sun Records as well helped to break down the color barrier with a mix of black and white musicians playing blues.
That's when black people wasn't getting played on. They called that shit race music. They used to call that shit race music, bro. That's more when Muddy Waters and them was doing it, but still, it's like putting black people on white radio. They was like, it was just like when David Bowie was talking to Doug from MTV, and he was like, well, I think people in the Midwest would be scared of Prince if they saw him on. And he was like, David Bowie just said, very interesting. Very interesting that you think that.
David Bowie.
Talking about Prince is gonna scare some people.
It's hard to imagine a major label would have ever.
You hear these young motherfuckers talk about Prince now, they be basically calling them pansy.
Their own labels if they weren't happy with their own. Frank Sinatra, for instance, had Reprise Records.
They be like, Prince is
Herb Alpert,
the tastemaker of everything we doing.
Also set up A&R Records, and unlike labels you might see today,
they don't even watch
Good Music or
shit.
Travis
They
Scott's
like, but
Cactus
we know
Jack
Prince
Records or other artist-owned labels. They weren't vanity labels. A lot of artist-owned record labels are actually still owned and operated mostly by majors. But when an artist was making their own label back in the day, it was entirely owned by them. It was entirely independent. Major labels had nothing to do with it. But throughout the decade, a growing worry began, and that was labels merging. In very complicated deals, more and more labels were buying up other labels and then sometimes being sold to other labels themselves. Like in 1963, Warner bought out Reprise, and a few years later, 7 Arts bought out Warner, merging to form Warner 7 Arts. Warner 7 then spent millions buying out
a shirt.
Collect them more than
Elektra.
Well, it's hard for you to keep a shirt
and was renamed Warner Communications.
You buy a vinyl for a certain project or a certain tour that you went to, and
not only were they buying out more and more labels, but they were also getting better at
keep that forever.
Like this resulted in, well into the 50s,
I've never had a record player a day in my
Chuck
life.
Berry were signed to indie labels. By the 80s, an absurd 80% of music sales were from the 6 majors. Eventually, once the major labels had eaten almost everyone else, they turned on themselves. Polygram was merged into Universal Music Group in 1999. Sony and BMG merged in 2004, and then in 2012, EMI was stripped down and its assets were sold to 3 remaining majors, leaving us with the big 3 that we know today: Universal, Sony, and Warner. But like I said, how did this really happen?
Because I remember is a Japanese company.
Yeah.
So the fact that they got so much of a stronghold over our entertainment industry is a little bit wild, to be real with you. But I think the other two are American based. And I don't listen. This ain't no issue. I'm not trying to say that there's an issue with Japanese people have. It's just crazy to think that in years that we come from having wars with certain people, we allow them to come in and conglomeratize. Because you would think that Sony, Samsung, so many of these companies have something to do with each other as well. And they infiltrated our marketplace so well with their electronics specifically that even these mics that we using, these are Audio Technica mics. This is a Japanese brand. Like they make electronics too. Let me not. I just want to make it very clear. I'm not trying to disparage. I'm trying to be very upfront and just saying like we come from one place with this group of people, and for them to have such a stronghold over our entertainment, it's like shit. I can propagate. Never mind.
Sony and Warner. But like I said, how did this really happen?
I'm just going right back
I
to
remember
the same.
reading about
Every time I try to
Monopoly
bring
in
up
school back in the day, and there aren't too many industries where 70% of the industry is owned by 3 companies. A lot of people talk about how tech is becoming very monopolistic, but even the big 7 of tech companies are 7 different companies. So what makes music so different? In some important structural ways, the music industry as it currently is will always drift towards a monopoly. For example, the cost of entry into the music label business increased significantly in the 20th century. Throughout the 60s in particular, production techniques increased dramatically in scope, from simple single-track recordings and a couple of instruments to grand, giant setups where the studio itself was an instrument. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen the inside of a recording studio, but it looks like NASA. It's crazy. At this point, the music labels themselves always owned the studios that the artist would record in. By the 70s, a basic 4-track recorder, a compressor, and even certain microphones could cost, in today's money, over $100,000.
Damn!
So because of the cost, fewer people were able to step into the ring. Another reason the music industry tends to lead...
bones? Shit. That's crazy. But I did see... I was watching the Sound City documentary one day, and he was like, when I bought this Neve console, and it was a big mixing board, and Neve is one of the best... You probably heard of Neve before. Yeah. And he was like, I bought that console for $75,000. And he was like, just to compare it, at that time, I bought a house in California that was only $38,000.
That is insane.
Yes.
That don't even make sense.
Exactly.
That don't even make sense. That's wild.
Exactly.
I couldn't imagine spending $75,000 on a board when I got a crib for 38.
Right now.
That's insane.
Like right now, and that crib is probably worth like $10 million.
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
There is, and the amount of power that gives record labels. Now, I'm not going to make this into an economics lecture, but when it comes to the music industry, there is a huge oversupply of labor. Most other industries, for example, like plumbing, are quite different from music. Most plumbers, or people who work regular jobs, would not be doing that job if they weren't getting paid. And they'd probably do a job in a different sector if they were getting more money. But when it comes to music, the majority of musicians don't get paid for their work at all, and usually are making music for fun or for enjoyment or just as a hobby. Honestly, if you're a musician getting paid at all, you can consider yourself lucky, because most people these days aren't. A lot of power. Obviously, most...
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
The value
don't care about Base
44 by musicians, but guess what percentage of the revenue they actually take home? Maybe like 50% or something like that. No, it's actually 7%. At least in 2000, 93% of the money made in the music industry went to the people who were not creating the music. It isn't like this in every other creative industry. Acting might look similar on the surface, but the vast majority of actors are members of unions. Most famously,
that's the thing. Hip hop, music, whatever you want to call it, we gotta unionize somehow. The same way they got the screen actors shit, we gotta unionize, bro. Like, nigga, ain't no shows less than 50 bones that you paying the artist. Like, it gotta be shit where it's like, nah, bro, I'm in the union.
Right. Some way to make sure that people getting paid and getting the due process, bro. Yeah. Like, this should be crazy. Motherfuckers be out here just scamming on left and right when it comes to shows. I mean, I've even done a show and then they just didn't let us perform. Like me and Ozzy.
I remember when I opened up for Kurt Cobain's, I really closed the show. Niggas was walking, the whole club, the whole spot was walking out while I'm up there, and I'm just like,
I'm supposed to be an opener.
Bro, I'm in high school at this time too, so I'm just like, I'm trying to like pour my heart into the performance to try to get people like, nigga, we do not give a fuck.
We came here for him.
Bro, it was 6 people in the crowd when I finished performing, and one of them was my mom, and she was. You did so great. I'm like, I ain't do great.
Ain't nobody here.
Actors
It's
but
happened
there's
to
really
me.
nothing like
It's
this
happened
in
to
the
me.
music
worst.
industry.
Performing
So what does
after
this have to do
the
with
headliner. I'm like, I was supposed to go before.
Man,
Everybody leaving. Yeah.
music.
Well, since record labels can get away with paying lower wages, they tend to have very high profit margins. In the 2000s, for instance, record companies saw their revenue increase by 21%, but their profits went up by 64%. That's how good they are at squeezing out every cost possible. And when they have all this extra money lying around, they just buy up
they
their
liars and
competitors.
cheaters
And
and
obviously, probably the
thieves.
most common thing is when a label has a lot of money, they can just keep signing new artist after new artist after new artist, hoping for hit after hit after hit.
Just giving niggas advances.
Yeah, you got to pay it back.
You just basically a bank. You an artist bank at that. Damn. I think I just figured out. Let's keep going before they kill us.
If possible. And record labels have a
Use
lot
the
of control in the
artist
way they
thing.
pay their artists in more than just
Yeah,
one
look,
way.
I take
For
his
example, if we
money,
go back to
give
the
it to
plumber
him.
analogy, when a plumber's looking for a job, they may look at a
He'll
few
make
different
more
companies
money.
in their area and compare
make
how
them
much
pay
they're
it back.
paying,
Make 'em-
benefits,
make
whatever.
both
But when
of
you're a
them pay the
musician,
same
you
money
instead are
back.
being spotted by a record label. And according to a lot of estimates, less than 1% of musicians ever get a record contract. So if you're a musician and you get an offer from a recording company, are you going to turn it down?
Yes.
Probably not. And you're not going to be like, oh, well, let me compare to how much this next record label's paying, because they might not even,
If
this
a
is
record
once in a
company in
lifetime
this day and
opportunity,
age is
you
trying
might
to
never
give you
get that
some
again.
money,
So pretty much
you
record
probably
labels
better
can
off
just
doing it by
offer
yourself.
whatever they want, and there's a good chance
I'm
it's
not
done
saying you
unless
it's
you're
gonna be
going
quick.
super
I'm
viral
just saying
online.
that you
They
better
know
off.
that they have a lot
Yeah.
of leverage over a young up and
Just gotta
coming
figure out how
nobody
to do
than
it.
they will a successful celebrity. And they
Better
also
off
tend
you
to
figure
offer
it out than
contracts
they
that are
figure
very
it out.
long.
Exactly.
LeAnn Rimes, for example,
'Cause then
Because
they're
if
gonna
they
take your
figure it
money.
out, they
broke
gonna
onto
do
the
it
scene
for
at an
somebody else who
extremely
they
young
think
age
better
when she was
than.
only 12 years old, and she was
You
given
figure
a
it out.
21 album
Fuck
contract.
everybody
That
else.
is insane. The major labels, however, have done much more shady things to entrench their control. Not only are they releasing music, but they're also trying to
Ronan.
control what
What's the
music
word?
you
I ain't
hear
know that was
and not
Ronan.
give you the
Shout
option
out
to
my man
choose. Not only do the big three record
Big
labels
dog.
also own the
Scooty.
big three music publishers, but for decades they've controlled what songs were played on the radios as well. The major labels had by
that
far
money
the
in a
most money to
straight
spend on
jacket, or am I
promotion,
tripping?
I
marketing
swear to God,
deals,
he
and other
was.
methods of influencing DJs to play their songs. Although payola, which just means paying for certain songs to be played on the radio, is illegal,
Berry
that has
was a pedophile.
DJs to play their songs. Although payola, non-promotion, music publishers, but for decades they've controlled what songs were
Yeah,
played
he
on
was
the
in- he
radios
was
as
in-
well. The
he
major
was
labels
either a
had by
straight
far the
jacket or he
most
was in a
money to
gi.
spend on promotion, marketing deals, and other methods of
Either or.
influencing DJs to play their songs. Although payola, which just means paying for certain songs to be
Is
played on the
illegal.
radio, is illegal, that hasn't stopped the labels either. And a 2006
It's
investigation
illegal.
by the
Payola
Attorney
is
General of the state of
illegal.
New York resulted in them being fined over $30 million.
Shit is
after
a
it was
FCC
discovered that they had
violation,
all been illegally
bro.
bribing radio
Not
stations
pay
to
for
play
your
their
music, to
and
be
this
honest,
wasn't the
but
first time they've
they
been caught.
doing
They've
it.
been doing this since like the 70s, and I'm pretty sure they still do it today. And you might be wondering, well, radio is dead, so who cares? But even now, the major labels have a lot of influence
Now it's
on
just
streaming
playlists.
services. When YouTube was bought
Right.
by Google,
Now
the
they
major
just
labels
moved
got a
it to
3%
playlists.
share. Spotify also handed over 17% of its stock to the major labels, charging only $10,000 total since they knew it was the only way to license their songs. When Spotify went public a few years later, Sony's share
That's why
alone-
that UMG shit that happened with TikTok was such a big deal. When UMG like took all their music off of TikTok, and it was like niggas took basically, from what we seeing, a third of all the music in the fucking game and just said can't use none of it until y'all give us some of this percentage.
It's crazy.
worth 1.5 billion, meaning they got a return on investment of about 45 million%. And the labels are spending a small fortune each year on promotion, trying to get their songs on the biggest playlist on the streaming platforms. Even if you find a cool new
Alright,
app
bro,
that recommends
maybe
music, there's a very good chance it's owned by the
I
label.
didn't watch
Dixter
this,
is
but
owned by
damn,
Universal,
maybe
Top
I
is
should've
owned
went
by
to a
Warner,
different one.
and so on and so
I
forth.
could've
But there's
just-
actually
I
one
could've
guy
just
who
did
might
this
be
one.
responsible for the monopolistic
Shit.
nature of the music industry today. If it wasn't for a man named Robert Bork, the modern music landscape would look very very different. Basically, for over half a century after the Progressive Era, the government was extremely hostile towards monopolies. Most people in this time, and I'm sure you guys even remember this in your history books, thought that monopolies were bad since they don't allow competition, and they hold back entire industries and allow companies to just like set prices and control everything. But as time went on, a legal scholar named Robert Bork argued that this attitude toward monopolies was too dogmatic, saying that if you stopped one company from buying another, you would stifle it.
By the whole facial hair.
Still be bad,
I'm
but that's
perplexed,
so long
bro.
as prices didn't go
I
up,
hate
it should be
niggas,
fine.
bro.
And by
Niggas can grow full beards and shit and be doing dumb shit with it.
when Polygram was merged into
God
PUBG,
damn,
it
bro,
seemed
just
like
be a
Bork's
normal
line of
dude.
thinking was socially accepted by this point. So sure, music today is a monopoly or, you know, an oligopoly, like I said earlier. But you may be wondering, even if the companies use some shady tactics to get there, is it really a big deal? Does this cause any actual issues? Well, apart from what I mentioned earlier, it's not always bad, and sometimes it's actually been good.
You just
As
a
financial
whore.
analyst Felix Simons puts it, the fact that there are only 3 major record labels is a godsend to the world of digital
stream
music.
for a
It
different
means
day.
that if you're trying to do anything innovative with digital music, you basically only need to deal with 3 counterparties. Have you ever wondered why a single Spotify subscription can get you access to virtually every song ever made? Well, even if you were subscribed to Netflix, Disney Plus, HBO Max, Amazon Prime, etc., there'd still be loads of movies you couldn't watch. Well, a big reason is because there are hundreds of big individual movie studios. But to get to the vast majority of hit songs ever, you'll only need to talk to 3 labels. And that is a pretty big benefit. I mean, video and TV and movie streaming services are the worst, but that's probably the biggest, if not the only benefit. And the problems that the monopoly causes are much more numerous. And honestly, I was very surprised by how scummy, unfair, and unethical a lot of these practices used by the labels are. For starters, the major labels have honestly perfected the art.
It makes it better. He did say that's the only thing. So I'll give him credit for that. But it's like, it makes it better because at least I don't gotta have 10 different things to watch. But that's a part of the whole problem of the music industry of why this young lady right here is as big as she is. And I'm not saying that she shouldn't be a huge star, but she should not be considered as big of a pop star as what she. There should be other pop stars who are contending and going against her that 100%. Is comparable.
100%. I think BB Rexa, or whatever you want to call her, is one of them.
She got that Rexa. That's for sure.
Pretty much stealing from their artists legally. One of the main methods they
use
is called recoupment. Pretty much before an artist can actually begin earning money from their music sales streams, they first have to recoup the cost.
I just know she got a lot of writers credit. People don't even know she got writers credit
on the album, which
like
goes straight
Dream.
back to the label.
Yeah,
that does
Dream
sound kind of fair, but labels are very creative when it comes to the expenses they charge. As music accountant,
you wouldn't even know.
Counted once when he was looking through the recoupment costs charged by the labels,
he
was confused by thousands of dollars in food, champagne, and taxes included. And the label explained they were the cost of the artist contract signing party being charged back to them. And these aren't the only kind of made-up costs that record labels charge. By the way, I look different because I had to refilm this part of the video. Don't worry about it. The artist also usually contractually agrees to other costs of their albums, like packaging and breakage. However, these costs are still charged on the sales of digital albums, where obviously there is no packaging or breakage cost. Labels have even been known to get their pressing plants to undertake what are called third shifts, which means manufacturing albums as usual, but not registering them, meaning they officially don't exist, so the artist won't get paid for them. And all the profit will go straight to the label. Artists receiving proper financial advice will always be sure to audit the accounts and will prepare for lengthy battles with the
not even basically they're not putting the ISPC whatever code on it. So it's not even registered as an album. So basically that's literally just merchandise.
Yeah, it's not even.
If there's any weird junk fees. And the total cost of these junk fees can get pretty huge. With one music accountant alone claiming to have won back over $100 million for artists from audits. Recording contracts can also require artists to use record labels' internal things. Internal suppliers for things like promotion, music videos, and things along those lines.
One of the things that they do is they make you use certain engineers, and then those engineers work for the record labels. So those engineers charge a certain price just no matter what, so that they can because they're automatically just gonna take it out of your budget. So they'll make sure that you use those engineers so you'll run out of your advance even faster while recording. So it'll just be like, well, shit, we
need some more money.
Yeah, because they'll be like, well, he's not one of our like not signed. But what's the word? What's the word I'm looking for? Not accredited, but it's basically like being one of the engineers we're willing to let you work with, basically, though. Like, we know that he's gonna get you a good sound, so we're okay with you working with them. But what they do is they'll do that for the like biggest engineers in the world. So it's like, yeah, you can go work with him, but then he's gonna charge us $300,000 to do this album, basically. And that's just coming out of your shit, out of your tour or merchandise or whatever it may be. We just gonna take that. Now you getting $12,000 for the year. You made $2 million this year, but you gonna get 12. You gonna get 12,000.
Like TLC shit.
Yeah, literally. They was up there with 2-3 Grammys in their hands.
Yeah.
Like, we are broke.
Right.
These suppliers charge higher fees to the artist for their service because the artist is prohibited from finding anyone else cheaper. And even once you've paid all these fees and if you've recouped all the money, you still don't have generational wealth because you'll only get a portion of the royalties. The Beatles, for example, got paid only a penny per record, which had to be split between the group's management and its 4 members. This has gotten a little bit better over time. However, royalty rates are still very low. But the fact that modern artists can't distribute their music through the internet does force labels into offering slightly better deals. As Cory Doctorow and Rebecca Giblin put it, consider a 1970s era group
I got checked. 20,000 streams to get that
going
shit.
for the 2 years record, plus recording and tour costs of $110,000 on a contract with a 5% royalty. For every $100,000 their music brings in, 95 goes direct to the label, and 5 goes toward chipping away at their debt. It's not until their music has generated $3 million that the original $150,000 debt will be erased, and the band will start to be paid for the first time since they received that initial advance. Still just $5 for every 100 their music brings in. And if that sounds bad, that would have been a good deal. It's actually kind of crazy how many successful musicians have struggled to make ends meet. Tony Braxton, for example, sold $170 million worth of records on her first contract and only made $1,900 back.
I hated Tony Braxton when I was a
Fiona
kid.
Bevan, I don't know which one. Co-wrote Miley Cyrus's smash hit "Unstoppable," one of the most major tracks on the album, which top charts around the world, and she only made a few hundred.
See, I was just telling you, you get 15,000 at the end of the year.
$100 from it. As
you
Rebecca
blew
Gates, who
the
conducted a
Advance.
major
The
survey
Advance
of professional
gone.
musicians,
It's like
summarized,
Anderson
I've seen
Paak in
hard
this one
data
song.
for
He
people who are in
said,
successful
"My lawyer
bands,
called me,
festival
he's like,
headlining
so, you know,
bands,
this
who would
year you
make
made a
more
lot of
money in
money."
a good
He's like,
retail
"But the bad
job.
news is
But the
you
major
spent more."
music
Yeah,
labels haven't just
bro.
hurt musicians' pockets, but they've also hurt listeners as well. Samples are probably the biggest example of this. Back in the 1980s, the law around sampling was much less clear, and for the most part, artists could just sample whatever they wanted. This resulted in a lot of
Now Marvin
sample-rich
Gaye
albums
family
without a lot
suing
of
everybody.
financial backing,
Yeah.
like
Nigga,
Public Enemy's
they
Favorite
don't
Black
give a
Planet,
fuck if
or
you
the Beastie
didn't
Boys'
sample it.
Blue
They just
Moon,
be
the
like,
final track of
that
which
sound like
included
Marvin, don't it?
4 different
There's a horn in
samples.
there.
Today, things are a little bit
Sue 'em.
different. As one entertainment lawyer summarized,
Sue him for everything. Not even just the song. Sue him for everything.
He said the word gay.
Man.
there's 2 kinds of samples: the really fucking expensive type and the really fucking expensive
need to
type.
shut
In
the
the early
fuck up, 'cause they
2010s,
gonna
a
see
single
this shit and
sample
they gonna
cost
sue me.
$5,000, and it's almost certainly gone up an awful
It was
lot
fiction.
since then.
Reason?
In some cases,
fiction.
the
I haven't
copyright
seen
holder
somebody
will
use
demand 100%
Reason in
of the
so
song's
long.
revenue
Yeah.
for their sample to
The
be featured on it.
rapper?
According to journalist Perry Allen, if it was released today,
I ain't
each
heard
copy
nobody
of
talk about
Takes an
Reason
Extra
in so
Million
long
Sold
either.
Back would have had to
Shit.
be sold for $159 just to pay all the royalties from publishers making claims for 100% on their compositions. Of course, sampling still takes place, but only those who are very, very well off can afford to sample anymore. As one music
You know, they
executive
say that's why Travis Scott did what he did on his last album, and then he fell off because he was like, they say because he was still signed to Grand Hustle at that time, T.I. label.
Was he really?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Travis Scott was signed to Grand Hustle. He wasn't signed to Good Music. He was signed to like, if you look at the credits on Astro World, you will see Grand Hustle, an imprint of, I think it's like Interscope or something like that. But he was a Grand Hustle artist. So I think what he did for that album is that's why he used all those samples and he gave everybody credit so that Grand Hustle would have to pay all those people that money outright, which was probably the parent company of whoever it was, and they had to pay all that money. And then that was his last album for them, so he never really he kind of just like, fuck it, I'm done.
But I
now.
mean, what artists really did much after on Grand Hustle anyways, for the most part, other than, you know what I mean? Like, we saw Dro for what, 5 minutes?
Yeah.
confess.
You know?
Who else? I can't. It's some other artists who definitely.
What is it? Young LA. He was there for 5 minutes.
You know who was signed to Grand Hustle? Iggy Azalea.
Oh yeah, yep.
Iggy Azalea.
And he was talking about once she found she could do music for white people,
he low key had. It was like he had what's a basketball team like the Minnesota Timberwolves in like 2013, 14. When Cat, Levine, all of them, Wiggins, all play, it's like y'all can't get it done together.
Right.
Y'all gotta go. You know what I'm saying? Y'all gotta go to different places and do shit in other places for y'all to actually be more successful than what y'all gonna be here. But it's like they could have had something.
Yeah.
They could have had something. If they had to put some more right people in position, they might have been able to fuck around and do something with that group, with that lineup.
Especially if you had that lineup right now,
who have either the resources or the connections.
If you had
we be talking about them.
If 2-3 years ago you had Levine, Cat, and Wig on the same team, hard team to beat in the league, bro. Honestly, I'm sorry, Jimmy Butler fucked that shit up.
Record labels are also pretty good at maintaining as much control as possible over their artists. Prince is probably one of the best examples of this. In the early 1990s, he began appearing at concerts with the word slave written on his cheek. He became very frustrated at the degree of control Warner had over him when they began refusing to release all the songs he wanted to. The label was worried that releasing too many songs at once would decrease the demand because there'd be so much supply, so he was pretty upset. Another major source of his anger was the status of his master recordings. As he said himself, if you don't own your masters own you. If you don't know, master recordings are the original, definitive recordings of a specific song, the recording from which all other copies of the song are made. Owning the masters of a song gives you total control over it. You get to decide how it's re-released, what commercials or films it's used in, how it's sampled, etc. Perhaps
get all
even
that
more
shit.
Importantly,
I got the masters all for all my songs because I recorded them bitches right here.
Are designed to get as much control over their masters as possible in the hands of the major label. Usually, a contract will allow label ownership of master
the same
recordings
drug
until
Michael
the
Jackson
copyright
died off.
expires, which is typically the lifetime of the artist plus 70 years. The U.S. copyright law does give artists the option to get their masters back after 35 years, but you can imagine that the major labels make this as difficult as possible. Contracts are usually written up with these complicated clauses, which means even if an artist tries to get their masters back, it'll only succeed after a very long and expensive legal battle.
That's what Mace was saying about Diddy. He was like, I appreciate him giving me my masters back, but he was gonna have to anyway. He was just like, bro, I'm like, thank you. He was like, thank you for doing what you were supposed to do.
Right.
Just a way of pressuring and bullying artists into not doing that. And of course, these are only the shady things that we know about. I wouldn't be surprised if the big three were up to even shadier and crazier things behind the scenes, out of the public eye. The big three record labels then not only have a level of monopolistic control over the industry, which is almost unparalleled in any other sector, and they aren't friends of the musicians, listeners, or really anyone other than their shareholders. But at the end of the day, there is some good news. The market share of the big three majors has just began for the first time ever to decline. In 2012, they controlled about 76% of the recorded music market, and today they control slightly less than 70%. Technological changes have dramatically decreased the amount of power record labels have over young artists. As an article in GQ summarized, successful artists no longer
don't nobody want to get signed to Sony when they can just get famous on TikTok. TikTok gonna be the biggest record label in the next couple of years. Shit.
To make money. In 2011, Americans spent more on live music than recorded music for the first time since the invention of the gramophone. As physical formats fade away, artists won't need manufacture or distribution.
Ain't that bitch that you gotta crank for it to go?
It's possible,
I swear to God,
rare, to blow up just by uploading your music online, whether it be on TikTok, Instagram, whatever. And you definitely don't even need a recording studio. Bedroom pop was a huge genre that blew up during COVID. And it does feel like nowadays people are more aware than ever before of how exploitative record labels can be. The fact that the biggest artist in the world, Taylor Swift, has been so vocal about this in particular has definitely helped. But don't feel too optimistic because there are still causes for concern. In particular, the monopolization of other parts of the entertainment industry has increased rapidly in recent years. Disney's acquired the whole of 21st Century Fox, big shares in Epic Games and Hulu,
you get shot with a gun like this, you're gonna probably still live.
Disney's acquired the
you gonna die from
monopolization of other
parts. You ain't gonna die from
you ain't gonna die from the wound.
Look at this. I'll throw a pistol at you and kill you before that bitch do.
increased
Fuck outta
rapidly
here.
in recent years.
You gonna die
Disney's
from the
acquired
infection.
whole of 21st Century Fox. Big
You
shares
gonna
of
die
Apple,
because
lead
you gonna,
poisoning.
and now
yeah, you
looks
gonna
set its
shit
hands
and
on
forget
Warner
to
Bros.
wash your
Discovery,
hands or
too.
something
Unless
like
the government
that.
steps in, it's probably only a matter of time before
On
the
top
big
of it, you
three
probably gotta
become the
shit
big two,
outside.
and then perhaps even the big one. And believe me, however
Bullet
good
sitting
the
on
big
top of the
three are at
phone.
screwing musicians and others over, I'm sure the big one would be a lot better at it. If you like this video, you might like my video on artists finessing their fans. Obviously, we know labels
did like
are,
that video.
as we've seen in this video,
That was a good
way
video.
worse at it. But sometimes artists like to
We
play
actually
a
watched
role
that
in it
on
as well.
stream.
So make sure to click the video that's on screen right now.
Hey man, Matty Balls, pause.
What do you mean?
Another great one, young man. You be doing your thing, G. I fuck with you. I fuck with all your content. Any closing words?
Shit. Stay independent.
Stay independent. Stay independent. Yeah? Good closing words.